Hello and welcome everybody to the Pick Six Podcast. Sam McEwen along with the Silver Tongue, Evan Bland. It's election day here in Omaha, and we both live in Lincoln because we cover Nebraska athletics. But it is election day up here in Omaha, so follow the coverage on omaha.com for mayoral and city council elections. You can also find all of our Husker stuff at omaha.com. Evan's got some really good stuff up about Nebraska baseball. Can they make the Big Ten tournament? They're basically in the same situation as Nebraska basketball was a couple of months ago. I think it's probably going to go better for Nebraska baseball. But then he's also going to have an explanation, both in this podcast and in print, about the Big Ten baseball tournament. I listened to somebody yesterday try to explain it for 6 minutes, and they did not really get it. And you do. And I think
It's taken a while, but yeah.
you'll be giving information to people that I'm not sure they're aware of, and they may not necessarily be thrilled by. We may be joined by Tom Chattel eventually. He had a really good column over the weekend from talking to Troy Dannon, and had about a 45-minute conversation with him. And again, it was a very intriguing conversation. I kind of knew that some of the topics Tom would be talking about. I will say that some of the things that Chattel talked about with him were kind of interesting, and I was a little surprised by some of his answers. So I thought we'd start there. We're going to hit on the college football playoff potential expansion thing a little bit, and we'll obviously talk a little bit of baseball toward the end of this conversation. Again, everybody can find our stuff at omaha.com. So, Evan, the question I want to, the icebreaker I want, and this is not related to the conversation with Troy Dannon per se, is Nebraska has to play 3 teams over the next 6 years in a Big Ten SEC scheduling alliance. Who are your 3 teams that you'd want to see Nebraska play in a home and home? So they'd have their helmet would come to Memorial Stadium. Nebraska's helmet would go to their stadium. Who are the 3 teams that you want?
LSU for sure. That would be really fun. Tennessee, which I'm still bummed that that series got canned. That would have been really neat. And Georgia. I mean, just because let's have an old bowl game throwback, to a decade and a half ago. That would be fun to go down there. Seeing what that fan base would be like coming here would be pretty amazing. I was just looking this up the other day, Sam. I believe this is right. An SEC team hasn't come to Memorial Stadium as an SEC team since 1981. Auburn. I mean, that's amazing. So I'd be all about that. I, I'm curious your thoughts on what that could even look like, especially if the SEC goes to 9 conference games. I'm not sure what the appetite is for schools in those leagues to then have a scheduling alliance in addition to that. But yeah, give me LSU, Tennessee, Georgia. That would be amazing.
It's amazing that the first 2 of ours are exactly the same. LSU, bucket list. I want to go there. I think that's really what that's about. I don't know that I feel more strongly about LSU than I do, say, Florida, but I want to go to LSU, and I love that helmet. And what I actually thought about is I'm like, I want to see LSU's helmet in Memorial Stadium. I want to see that helmet here, and I'm not sure it's ever been here. I don't really know. Tennessee was the other one, and yeah, that's a special venue. And then my third one was Missouri. I think it would be great to put the victory bell up for grabs again. Missouri's football program is kind of back. I mean, they're pretty strong, and their stadium has been renovated. I think Husker fans who may recall what it was like going there in what was in '09. I mean, that was a miserable night, even though Nebraska won the game. But the stadium needed work. Well, it's been largely renovated. I know my brother went there a couple of years ago, and he said it was really nice, and that's notable. So those would be my 3. I'll tell you what my dark horse was. My sleeper was Vanderbilt,
Hmm,
because I'd like to go back to Nashville, and that's a
cool
cool
thing.
town. And I'll tell you what, Vanderbilt on a Saturday, like you go on a Friday night to Nashville, and it's about 85 out, and you're kind of walking. It's kind of late summer. Oh, that'd be sweet. I'd take that.
Incidentally, Sam, LSU did come to Lincoln, 1975. Nebraska won the game 10-7.
Yeah. The following year, I think it was a 6-6 tie
That's right.
at Tiger Stadium. So they did come once. I wasn't sure if LSU actually played here or if that was a one-off against Nebraska, but I don't know. LSU to me has got, I don't know, top five helmet in college football. And like my top five helmets are like LSU, UCLA, Michigan, USC's up there for me. Not for everybody, but they are for me. So like all these teams are coming. I mean, all these helmets are coming to Memorial Stadium and UCLA and USC, and I love those. I like Tennessee's helmet, to be honest with you. Always been a big fan of their colors and their look. Would have been nice to see that helmet at Memorial Stadium. So anyway, those are the three for me, and then Vanderbilt is that sleeper. I can tell you where I don't need to go to Texas. I don't need to go to Texas A&M. God bless both of those places and those programs. I don't want some big Nebraska, Texas A&M, Trev Alberts storyline, and I don't know that I have a keen ferocity to see Kentucky. So, but that's probably where Nebraska would play. They'd be like, They wouldn't. They'd find a way not to pair Indiana against Kentucky. They'd find a way to screw it up. Indiana's gonna play South Carolina. They'd find a way to not get that right. I wouldn't mind Arkansas either.
They'd get Mississippi State or something like that, and it'd be like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, those would be. I'd love to see Arkansas or Ole Miss, maybe even Mississippi State, but I don't want to go to a school that outside of Missouri because I think there's a real rivalry there. I don't. I've never felt as strongly about Texas and Oklahoma as other people have. So um, I enjoy going there in 21. That was fun, but I don't know that I need to go back. Okay, so I want to go to. I know that you read Chattel's column on from Troy Dannon his conversation. There's a lot in there, and Dannon is a sharp guy and has a lot of different thoughts and talked a little bit about revenue sharing. I don't want to get into that today. Nebraska says they're not going to share the data of that, and that the student numbers are protected by FERPA, and that the overall share they're not going to share. And I don't know how that would be protected, but we'll worry about that another day. We'll worry about debating FOIAs another day. What I wanted to talk about was the quote near the top, and Tom does a nice job of starting the column with, first the AD wanted to celebrate. Momentum's a real thing. Dannon said there's a lot of enthusiasm and optimism. Perception is reality and becomes reality, so it is important. One thing I've learned here in 14 months, there's more people telling me what we haven't done than there are celebrating what we have done. One of the things we've tried to do is turn the outside noise off and celebrate. We're eighth in the Director's Cup. It's pretty rare air. You need to celebrate that. Curious to get your thoughts on that comment. One thing I'll note, at this time last year, Nebraska was seventh in the Director's Cup, and they finished 22nd. So to be clear, you can slip here. What'll happen? But they're going to get points for tennis. The men's tennis team will score them points.
Softball.
Softball and track.
Yeah.
The things that other teams score for that Nebraska doesn't are tennis, golf. There might be something else in there, water polo, something like that. And then I think baseball. I don't know if Nebraska's going to make the NCAA tournament. So the chances of Nebraska finishing eighth are slim. They have a chance of finishing in the top 15. Softball team makes some noise in the NCAA tournament. I think they could do it. We'll just have to see. So again, they're more likely to be, 17th than they are 8th. But what do you think of that comment that Dannon made? And then there's another comment later on. I kind of don't want to hear what we didn't do. And I kind of don't want to hear what happened 10 or 20 years ago. As important historically as it is to the brand, it is of zero value to whether we do something tomorrow. Focusing on the successes now is what's going to help us tomorrow. I kind of don't want to hear what we didn't do.
Right. I mean, to me, it's a discussion of like how much do you celebrate some of the sports that aren't quite as high profile that are doing well versus the highest profile ones that have room to grow. Like it's an interesting climate, I think, in the athletic department, Sam, because and Tom lays it all out. I mean, wrestling finishes second, volleyball and Lexi Rodriguez have a great year. I mean, there are so many other individual success stories going on within the program, but what the casual fan is going to see is Nebraska football made it to a bowl game, and that was kind of that. Men's basketball team fades down the stretch, misses out on the Big Ten tournament. Baseball preseason top 25, trying to squeak into the its own league tournament. So like the sports, with the exception of volleyball, that people follow maybe the most have been relative disappointments for what they thought it was going to be. So yeah, if you're Dannon, I mean you're in charge of everything, and there was a ton to celebrate this year for sure. Uh, but I'm guessing what he's heard and what he doesn't want to hear is from the people who follow the sports I just mentioned, that you're just kind of left wanting more, and you've been left wanting more for a long time. If you football, men's basketball, baseball, if you're craving next level stuff, you've been hungry for a long time, and I'm guessing that's what he's heard, even amid all this success that's going on.
For sure. And then I think that's part of it is that there's a certain level of achievement that's gone on in some of the smaller sports, and I think we covered those achievements. I mean, we wrote a brief about the Nebraska men's tennis team making the NCAA tournament. And that was, and I went and watched the team multiple times this season. And so like, I understood that they were pretty good. And we wrote about the bowling team and their elite player. And we've written about softball religiously. Luke Mullen for the Journal Star writes that for us, but we've written, 4 or 5 stories a week. So I think everybody's real clear on the positive stories within the program. I understand where he's coming from. I do. I think that he probably isn't necessarily talking solely about fans, because I mean fans can say what they want. They don't work for the athletic department, and it's their dollar, it's their money. So if they want to go to a movie and say, well, this Martin Scorsese movie wasn't as good as Goodfellas. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, there's people who go to a Martin Scorsese movie and they compare every movie he makes to the best movie he made. If somebody wants to go to a Husker football game and go, oh, it's not 95 Huskers. That's true. You can do it. I think it could be also just like wanting to make sure that sometimes people within the athletic department, because they care so much, can get, I mean, they can just hear about, again, the frustrations of the lack of success and the other things. And they can get, frustrated. And I think he might be speaking to some degree of that. Like you don't want to you want to be positive where you can and upbeat about what's going on and spring in your step kind of thing. I think the athletic department is healthy. I think without almost any exception, the women's sports at Nebraska are top flight. And they're doing really, really well. Volleyball's doing great. The women's basketball team is on very stable and steady ground. I know they want to make a Sweet 16, and I'll talk at some later date about whether I think they've assembled the roster to do so. I think they could. It kind of depends. But that's a next step. But shoot, they made two NCAA tournaments in a row. That should be the standard here, is making that every year and then building from there. Bowling is great. Volleyball is obviously great. Women's gym is great. So I get where he's coming from. At the same time, again, so much of what the state is about and the culture like sport is football. And there's just a sense of like everybody knows that this is a really big year in football. Like that, nobody's sugarcoating it. Matt Rule's not sugarcoating it. Nobody's downplaying it. That would have been year 3 for Scott Frost, but COVID hijacked that. Everybody was going to go into year 3 for Frost. And they're going, okay, you got 5 games at home to start the season. You got Adrian Martinez, 3rd year. You got some guys on defense. Let's see what you got. And COVID ruined that. So we'll never quite know what it could have been for Frost. But we will know with Rule. Like he's going to have a season, and they're going to, and I'm excited. Personally, I'm excited. Like I'm excited for this season because I think it's a defining year. It's not totally defining. Like if they go 7-5, then you're looking at next year and saying, all right, this is the year you got to go, win 9 or 10. But it's a big year. If they win 10, then this thing's going to really take off. And if they don't, if they go 6-6, I think people are going to be like, well, we like this coach, we like these kids, but man, we're just going to have to this now we're in real wait and see mode if year
Hmm.
three doesn't go as planned. So, and then any frustrations people have about Nebraska basketball, I think is reasonable. I just Nebraska basketball fans are very patient, they're very supportive. I don't know what else to say. That program is paying the coach well. The assistants are paid well. You know, I'm sure Fred could have talked to 100 guys for his assistant job. He hired Pat Monaghan. Seems like a good hire. At the end of the day, Nebraska is supporting that basketball program relatively well. So whatever they're doing, like that matters. He also mentioned in the column that Fred Hoiberg is a whale of a coach. I actually get on board with that. Yeah, I'm
From
not
an
sure that that's enough. Is
from an
he?
X's and O's standpoint, from a roster building standpoint, all of it.
Well, I think he said it. He said whale of a coach. I think that's reasonable. I think now they just promoted Luca Virgilio to GM, right? That's his title now.
Mhm.
And so some of it, it's he's got to shape that role, and he's got to. It's about the players. It's not a knock on Fred. It's just you got to get the guys. It basketball is a player's game. Do you watch the NBA playoffs? I know you're a Spurs fan. They're not in it, so
I watched the draft lottery and saw they got the number 2 pick. That was
yeah, they're
exciting.
always really good at that draft lottery, aren't they?
They they've nailed it the years they've needed to. But yeah, some of
They're
it I just
they're going to get Giannis, right? They're going to
maybe
trade that pick, and they're going to trade the pick and Stephon Castle, Steffi,
maybe so.
to Milwaukee, and they're going to get Giannis.
That'd be interesting. How old is Giannis? I'm not sure how old he is, but
30.
I'm not sure. I think you can build
Well,
this
that's
thing up
prime of
from
life
within.
right there. I don't think LeBron James was ever better than when he was 30. He's 40 now. LeBron was 30 in 2015. They're pretty good. He was pretty good.
He was. That's true.
And MJ was probably about as good as he ever was. Because Michael was 30 and I don't know, 92 or 93. Has there ever been a better basketball player on the earth than the Michael Jordan that played the Blazers and the Suns? I don't think so.
Probably not.
That's about the time that he went and played baseball. So like 30 is actually that's the sweet spot. Like that's when the player is arguably, if he stays healthy, has his best 3 or 4 years. And
Yeah,
I'm telling you, it's going to happen. I think the Bucks they can't build it around him. So
maybe so.
yeah,
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying, and I know this isn't a Spurs podcast, but I don't think they're ready to bring in a guy in his prime. I think they're a couple years away still. So
yeah.
to play for now when they're not ready to play for now around him. But anyway, but yeah. So your point about the NBA playoffs.
Well, so the NBA playoffs, you watch them, and it's about the players. I mean, the coaches are great guys. Um, was Chris Finch a good coach? Sure. I don't know. But Anthony Edwards played pretty well last night, and Julius Randle's, but like all those things. And I'm a Warriors fan, for people who don't know. So, Steph didn't play last night, he's hurt. And they don't have. I mean, the Warriors played hard, but they didn't have the best player on their team in the game. So, they struggled to win. So it's a player's game. So like that's basketball. And, you know, I don't question Hoiberg's ability to adjust. I think if you told me before the season they went 17-14, well, let's say they went 18-15 because they went to the Big Ten tournament and they lost a game, I would have been like, yeah, that's about right for that roster. I I'm not trying to be rude. It's about the players. So
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 Let
I
me
think what Dannon says is true, but simultaneously, like, and he says, well, the past, what we didn't do in the past, we being Nebraska with basketball, shouldn't affect what we do in the future. And he's right about that. I just would say that like it's going to come down to the player acquisition. And I've talked to Wilson. I think Wilson and John might record a podcast this week. It's not that I don't like Nebraska's acquisitions. I just compare them to the acquisitions of other peers, both in the Big Ten and up the road in Omaha. And I feel like Fred Hoiberg's going to have to do his best coaching job to win 20 games, like a hell of a coaching job, which he might do. He might, and I wouldn't put it past him. It's just I feel like the players. So that's the challenge there. But at the same time, the fans have every right. They're packing PBA. They're spending the money on the season tickets. They're getting all the concessions. They're doing everything they need to do. The fans, if they want us, hey, we want a product that beats Rutgers and USC. Fair.